So
Perfect.
awesome.
All right. And Alex, take it away. Thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm super happy to be here. I want to apologize in advance if it gets glitchy or anything gets strange. Hi, Rebecca. I am so lucky to be here. And of course, I was just lucky enough to meet both Melissa and Mary, but Rebecca and I have been having a full-on love affair for, I think, 3, 4, 5, 6 months now. And I am incredibly impressed with your organization and with what you're doing. And so honored to be a part. I want to apologize. I am in Sicily, and partially because I am a caregiver. And my beautiful mom-in-law from Sicily, actually, we lost her in March. And we're here to see family and to close some things down. Any of you guys who are unpaid caregivers know that after you've lost somebody, the job's not over. Sometimes some of the hardest stuff gets going right then. So we're in the middle of that, and there are some beautiful, beautiful moments, and then there are some moments that are really hard. But it did make tonight even more poignant. And I do want you to know, I'm going to go run through a bunch of data, but one of the data points I don't have in the slide deck, I have right here, which is unpaid caregivers sometimes cope with alcohol. And so when we're done, this is sitting next to me, because it's, what time is it? It's 10 o'clock here where I am. And I'm going to go out and sit with my honey and going to drink this champagne. So I want you guys all to know, yes, I sometimes cope that way 100% with the stress of all of this. So what we thought we would do, and we had fun planning this ahead of time. Yeah, thumbs up, right, Rebecca? I'd like to say I choose meditation, but sometimes I don't. Is I'm going to run through a quick overview of how we got here, meaning how did archangels become archangels, and then we're going to run through some really beautiful data, hard but beautiful. And I'm actually going to demo for you guys something that we were just brainstorming. There are 1,000, this is when Rebecca and I first fell in love. We believe that there are all sorts of ways that the tools that we have could really be used to help with the tools that you have and vice versa. We are enormously impressed with, I spent a bunch more time on your website and looking at the campaign and the tools you guys put together for people. We want to be driving more people to that whenever we possibly can. That's the role we want to play. So I'm going to share my screen, and after I do so, Melissa, just be ready to let me know if there's anything that is not working as I call this up. And you should all panic a little bit because there are a lot of slides. That's because there are a lot of slides, because there's a lot of data. But I'm going to move through it really, really quickly. And if somebody wants to stop and just wave your hand. I can see you, Melissa. You're right on the top of my screen, and Rebecca, you're towards the bottom, so I can see you guys. If someone's asking a question and I'm not seeing it, feel free to stop me. But sounds like a good plan. Can I get a thumbs up? Okay, cool. So the best way to describe what Archangels is doing is, I got to start by explaining a company called Eliza. And this company was started in 2000. It was a technology platform. And really what it let us do was interact in a very comprehensive way with people about their health. And while I was there, which was for about 15 years, we did over 1 billion with a B interactions with people about their health. And what I will tell you that we learned the hard way is when you are reaching into somebody's home or on their mobile phone, they're not calling into you, you're getting them. And you want to talk about people taking better care of their diabetes or their cardiovascular disease. That's actually not what most people have the luxury of being able to talk about. And what we learned the hard way is the things that bubble to the top for them are in fact these other challenges, right? Like caregiver stress, financial stress, relationship stress, workplace stress. So we came around to this belief that health is actually life. And we need to expand the definition of health to include life, because when life goes wrong, health goes wrong. And we actually put together, our argument was those 4 things I just went through. We called them the unmentionables. We had a jokey tagline, sex, drugs, and a crappy boss. But it's actually not a joke, right? On some level, caregiver stress, financial stress, relationship stress, workplace stress, when those things happen, it does have an extraordinary impact on our health and well-being, and top and bottom line aspects of our lives as well. So we actually built something called the Vulnerability Index. And the Vulnerability Index was our way of measuring for an individual the presence and magnitude of those life obstacles, those life challenges, and then balancing those against your personal amount of positive and negative coping factors. And that index returned a score that validated for somebody, yeah, things are hard, you're not crazy, or things are great, you're doing well. When we left Eliza, we thought, okay, what is it that we really want to focus on? And what we came back to in this extraordinary clear way is we think caregiving is the epicenter of all of it. If you are a caregiver, you will have financial stress, you will have relationship stress, you will have workplace stress. And when we were thinking about how to change the world, for us, the way to get started is we've got to acknowledge this beautiful population. And this was back in 2015. So Archangels Take One was born, it failed. Let's save that for another webinar about failures. I'm totally in if anyone wants to do it. It's my favorite topic. And Archangels Take Two started in about 2017. And you can think of us as really this movement and platform that's reframing how caregivers are seen, honored, and supported using a combination of data and stories. And we do that in a way that has a very public and private component. And I think you feel that dance, right? We're a movement, but we're a platform. We're talking about data, we're talking about stories, and we're talking about things we can do through private, through employers and health plans and health systems, but we also know so many unpaid caregivers have to quit their jobs. Why? Because they have this job called being a caregiver. So we also want to focus on policy and advocacy and finding people out where they are, which is the whole, what's the Caregivers Count campaign about? Caregivers count, right? We got to go find these caregivers wherever they are. We got to lift them up. So that's what Archangels is all about. I'm going to share data that I think most of you guys have seen in different ways, shapes, and forms, but I'm going to like sort of fly through it because it shows why we're focused on the things that we're focused on. So I want to start before COVID. So we're going to use the Wayback Machine and go back to before COVID, when that big AARP study came out in 2020 that we were all like, yes, finally, people are noticing 53 million caregivers in the US. And we're like, my gosh, that's a lot. And by the way, that's 21% of us, right? Keep that number in your head. We were obsessed, have always been obsessed with the notion that we think of a caregiver as a 46-year-old woman who's caring for her mom, and that's true, and she is. But guess what? 45% are men. 1 in 4 are millennial. 1 in 5 are Gen Z. We did a study that was published by the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association. We partnered in looking at data. This was pre-COVID data, but it was published post-COVID. But it showed that before COVID, we already had 26% poorer health, overutilizing the ER, having more hospitalizations, twice as likely to develop chronic illness, twice the rate of depression. Now I want to come back from the Wayback Machine to where are unpaid caregivers right now. And that is an unpaid caregiver, and that's a lot of sharks, right? Like coming at them as they are doing their best to keep their heads above water. And as we're going through this, I also want to celebrate unpaid caregivers are extraordinary, right? It's probably one of the greatest jobs I'll ever have. It just has a lot about it that takes a lot out of somebody. And everything that we do, and I know this is a cornerstone of your guys' campaign, is we got to lift up caregivers at the same time that we lift up those we're caring for. You can't lift up one and in the process inadvertently denigrate the other. It's again, a dance and how we do these two things together. So let's go to post-COVID, or as we are in COVID, what are these statistics? So if we ask people, are you worrying about or caring for the health of a family member, neighbor, or friend? It's actually 66% say yes. That was a campaign that Archangels did in early 2021. But we also were very lucky, and Rebecca, I'm gonna run through the other 2 CDC studies, and then we don't have our slides yet for the other one, but I'm gonna give you those stats, and you're gonna freak out, everybody, if you haven't seen them yet. The first study we did with the CDC, published by the CDC, was published in August. And what it showed was, of these unpaid caregivers, 56% have clinically significant anxiety or depression. That's 2.5 times the rest of the population. It got a ton of press, picked up all over the place. One famous quote, caregivers are not all right. What does that mean? Well, 31% of unpaid caregivers thought about suicide in June, okay? This is in June, versus 3% of the rest of the population. So that's 10 times as much suicidal ideation. What do we do when we're unpaid caregivers? Well, we self-medicate. In fact, unpaid caregivers increasing their use of substances to cope at 5 times the rate, again, joking, not joking, of everybody else to cope. And we have other data points that show for a lot of us in certain moments, you don't have the luxury of having alcohol. So what do? You eat. So we have another data point. This is also in the Blue Cross Blue Shield study that showed that 50% of unpaid caregivers self-medicate through food. There's a reason it's called comfort food, right? The number of caregivers who will share with you how much weight they have gained through the process. 50% coping through food. So we had another study that got published in September, and this one looked at the impact of COVID on caregivers getting care. And you guys have all experienced and seeing it, delay or avoidance of medical care because of COVID-19. 5 times the rate of delaying or avoiding urgent or emergency care, 1.5 times the rate for just routine care. So a massive, massive increase in the number of people who are like, I can't go, I literally can't go, or I can't leave the person I'm caring for, or I'm afraid of getting sick and bringing something back. So my health is gonna go on a back burner. And we've seen that over and over again. And I will not talk down to this crowd or to any caregiving crowd by saying something like, so, hey, everybody, take care of yourself, because that is ridiculous. And nothing makes me madder faster than when I'm talking about the role that I'm in and someone's like, you just need to start sleeping more and take some time for you. You should start running. And I'm going to be really rude for a second. This is what I say to them. Like, I'd like to do that. I can't do that because I'm in this role and I'm not sad about it, right? Caregivers don't complain, but it does mean I don't have a lot of time to do these other things in my life. So one of the things that really resonated with us about your Caregivers Count campaign is this statistic. 50% of caregivers historically don't even respond to the term caregiver. So it is so incredibly important that collectively as a movement, we all combine our forces and get out there to help people understand when they say, I'm not a caregiver, I'm just a husband, I'm just a grandson, I'm just a nephew, I'm just a friend. Yes, you are, and you're awesome, and you're also a caregiver, right? These two things go together. And the whole term archangels, Rebecca will giggle about this, was because we thought, well, what's another term? If someone responds to the term caregiver, that's fantastic. But for those who are not, what are other terms that we can use? And that's the genesis of the term archangels, so like badass warrior angels, spreading our wings out over these people that we're caring for and lifting them up. And we wanted it to be aspirational. We wanted it to be something that people felt like, oh, I'm an archangel, right? The notion being that a guy could walk into a bar wearing a biker jacket with the Archangels logo on the back, and another guy could come up to him and be like, dude, you're an archangel? Me too. How are you doing? Right? That's the whole notion behind what Archangels was all about. In between Archangels Take 1 and Archangels Take 2, came to the belief that I lived in a bubble, and I went to work at Walmart as a cashier, and realized very quickly that retail is the front line of health. I heard story after story from people. What were the stories about? It was about being a caregiver. And so we thought, okay, what if we take this movement to the aisles of Walmart, for example? Why don't we wear a little pin on our cashier uniform that says, are you a caregiver? Ask me how we can help. And then we have a care sheet. I can't show it to you because I'm not in my office. But if somebody asked us, we had a care sheet that would tell them where to go, right? Go to NPAF, go to Massachusetts Care Alliance, it would have the places that they could get support for free. Let me just ask you guys, do you think that worked? Do you think that was a fail? When was the last time you A, read the button on your cashier's vest, or B, asked a question about what it said? Nobody ever, never did. We learned that the hard way. So in a panic, we threw on some wings and we started walking around Walmart wearing these wings, and it was extraordinary how quickly everything changed and people would come up to us. It was a conversation starter. They would come up to us and say, how'd you earn those wings? Or did you just fall from heaven? And that was our excuse to say to them, actually, we're doing a movement to support unpaid caregivers. What's caregiver? That's anybody who's caring for someone that they love. And the number of times that people's shoulders come down, they will get teary because we'll say right back, if they say that they are, like, oh, thank you so much for what you're doing. Are you all right? How's it going? Right? Did you know there were these resources to help? No, I had no idea there were resources to help. No, nobody has ever thanked me before. So that sort of was the rebirth of the Archangels movement. And we took it out onto the street. Any of you guys, I had to put this in here because Rebecca and I both, Anna Gosline, shout out to you, Anna. She's on the right, that's Brian in the middle, who's now at MedStar, NPAF family, MedStar, a local friend and someone we need to rope into this movement. So Brian's there now. But same thing, right? Whether we're walking around the halls of an employer or a health plan or a health system or a community itself, this is a way to get conversations started. And I can tell you that Brian specifically was like, this is crazy. And Anna said, it's not going to work. I was like, okay, I double dog dare you, put on the wings and let's go. And now we're launching the Any Care Counts campaign with Massachusetts because of that, opening in Kansas, as Rebecca knows. So when everything was shut down because of COVID, we had to take what we were doing out into the digital world. And the good news about the name ARCHANGELS is it has some of those same properties as wearing wings. It's weird. And people were like, what's ARCHANGELS? That's strange. So if we do stuff out in the digital world, let's use this as an example to try and get folks to raise their head for a second, be like, oh my gosh, that's me. If we use the term caregiver, we get 1x. If we use the term archangel, for women, we get 1.8 times the conversion, and for men, we get 5.3 times. So just as we're thinking about all the different tools and modalities and methodologies that we're going to use to get to this population that has no idea that that's what they are, so that we can celebrate them and crosswalk them over to resources like NPAF, that's the way to do it. So our tool, once we've gotten someone's attention, is called the Caregiver Intensity Index. And it's 22 questions. I'm going to run through it with you guys. And it gives you a score at the end. You're in the green, you're in the yellow, or you're in the red. I was in the red at this point. Your level of intensity is greater than 80% of other caregivers. And then it tells you, here are the things that are driving that intensity, right? Here are 2 things that are making things particularly intense right now: navigating money and benefits for others, not knowing what to expect in this particular circumstance. But it also celebrates the things that are alleviating intensity. These are the things that are making it easier for you. Comes from tons of research. We can go into it in detail. Chuck Seisler, who is the co-author for the first 2 CDC studies, was really surprised at the extent to which the Caregiver Intensity Index was really the strongest predictor of one of these adverse mental health consequences. So I want to share this with you guys because I think it matters a lot to what you're doing and why we should all feel so hopeful that this is gaining so much attention, partially because it is so hard. So before COVID, we had about 28% of people in the green, 8% in the red. Not surprisingly, those numbers have really, really shifted. And we've seen that 3x increase now of caregivers who have really, really, really high intensity. What does high intensity mean? Impact on productivity. This matters because it gets employers' attention, right? If you're in the red, 49% negative impact on productivity. But there's all this other fantastic news, like the best buffers can be free. If you feel strongly supported, even by just one person, 40% lower depression risk than those who do not, 30% lower risk of anxiety. And if you know respite services exist, even if you do not use them, 70% reduction in stress. Again, so key. Caregivers don't even necessarily need to go to any of these places. To just hearing, you're not alone, we see you, we've got things that can help, can be step 1 in folks feeling better and with lowering somebody's intensity. So I want to show really quickly, we actually have 4 different populations, most current baseline across the US, top left, top right, a faith-based community. We're using faith-based communities because so many of the populations that have had to leave their jobs or weren't able to start in the first place, one of the places that they're getting care and support is through their faith-based communities. So top right, population based in Buffalo, New York. Top right is a group of 8 churches that has this kick butt, like peer-to-peer support group. Look at the impact that has, because folks are seeing each other in this role, they're telling them about resources that exist, and they're making sure people get support in whatever way works for them. Bottom right, different set of churches where that is not the case. And look at the difference in level of intensity. Over on the left, I know that some of NPAF, some of your volunteers, some of the folks that you guys are working with are what we call double duty caregiver. So I'm a paid caregiver and I'm an unpaid caregiver at the same time. Massive impact on health, as you can imagine. So 32% of that population is in the red. Research only matters to the extent it gets to action, to the extent it gets to impact. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to come back and share the Caregiver Intensity Index. But I want to stop sharing so I can see you guys for a minute, because I want to share, there was a study that we just had published a week and a half ago. Oh my gosh, is today Thursday? It's almost 2 weeks ago. We got to be co-authors on this one, which was amazing. And the other authors were that same original research team, folks from the CDC themselves, and it was published by MMWR. And it's already, gotten tons of press. Here is the data that I wanted to share with you. And pretty soon we'll have really pretty slides and we can share it back with you. But a full 43% of the US, 43% of the US is in this role of caregiver. Now, I can tell you, I think it's actually 66, but we got the CDC to publish data that it's 43%, right? The AARP study said 23%. Well, now we're at 43%. So that's huge, so important. If you are an unpaid caregiver, if you're in that 43%, 70% of us have at least one adverse mental health condition, clinically significant anxiety, depression, or a trauma-related disorder. Now I want to move over for a second. I want to talk about suicidal ideation. And I want to talk about suicidal ideation in 4 cohorts. Okay, cohort number 1 is the population at large. And across the US right now, 4.5% of the population has what we call active suicidal ideation. So I've thought in the past 30 days about taking my own life. 9.2% have passive suicidal ideation. I've had this. You wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, you know what? If I just don't wake up, if I get COVID right now and I don't wake up, I am okay. I am so tired. That's 9%. Now I want to go to cohort 2. Cohort 2 is I'm in a caregiver role, but only for someone under 18. Those numbers begin to double. 9% active, 19% passive. Okay, now I'm in a caregiver role, cohort 3, only for somebody over 18. It's 10% active, 16% passive. What if I'm sandwich generation? What if I'm caring for parent or guardian for someone or people under 18 at the same time over? Mary, I'm going to call on you, unmute for a second. What do you think the percentage of that population, the 23% of the US that is serving as an unpaid caregiver in the sandwich generation capacity, what percent has had active suicidal ideation?
Maybe half?
Half. It's 52%. And 58% has had passive. And you know what's beautiful about that? I made the mistake of saying in an interview that I found the data heartening. And someone said, how can you find that data heartening? I said, because anyone who's in that role knows that's true. But now it's out there. And guess what? If you're in a room full of sandwich generation caregivers and you've had these thoughts, you're in the norm. You're normal, right? And you know what's beautiful about that is for so many unpaid caregivers, part of what's so hard is you think you're the only one. And so if we can get this kind of awareness out there, that in and of itself begins to reduce stress and anxiety. And most importantly, drives attention to people so that we can start getting people to be seen. Don't ask a caregiver to self-identify, get that caregiver seen, because you create ecosystems that are so fertile with support. So I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen again. That is insane data, and I'm happy to follow up with all of this with you guys. I just need to own, who cares about data, blah, 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 unless, and Rebecca and I have described, we have termed ourselves team, hold on, kapow, because it doesn't matter, right? Unless you're doing something with it. So the Archangels platform is all about driving that awareness so we can get people to feel seen, get them to get their intensity index, crosswalk them over to the resources that exist that they probably didn't know about, and then at the same time begin to look at some population-wide reporting on the things that matter. So addressing this myth, using different language and terminology, understanding that a lot of unpaid caregivers are not reading their email, they might not even have email. So what are other mechanisms that we're using? Posters, flyers, newspaper ads, the Wings Brigade. That's what we call when we put our wings on. When we have a population, how can we say these are the things that are most driving load? These are the things that are the hardest. These are the things most relieving intensity, the buffers, and get more of those and make sure that our organizations have enough of those. And then how can we take things like intensity data and then overlay, let's say, social vulnerability data and look for hotspots that are defined in separate ways than we might have otherwise. So what I will do right now is I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do a quick demo for you guys. Look, I just wanna say, I freaking love this, right? I forward this to people all the time. This is the one I love the most, discussing what matters with the people who matter. So this is where I think we can start brainstorming. This is the intensity index. So let me restart it. Let's say someone emailed me a link. Let's say I walked by a poster, a Caregivers Count poster, and it had a little QR code and I clicked it. Let's say I was at a faith-based group and someone passed me a care sheet. I was at a team huddle and someone passed me the link that I could go to. I come here, it works on mobile obviously, but I'm doing it on my computer. Click here to get your score. So I'm like, oh, a score. I wonder what that is. I'm so curious. And it just starts walking through for you, you know, your situation. So I'm going to answer for myself so that we go fast, because I know I have limited time and I don't want to have one of you guys go through it, but we're going to get you this link and we're going to dream up ways potentially with Rebecca's permission and the team's permission to get you guys to be able to have this link and to share it. And then all this data can come back and NPAF can look and be like, oh my God, X% of this population is in the red versus this population is in the green. Why? What's going on? How do we get more in the green? So I'm going to answer for myself. We are caregivers. We were for 4. My beautiful mom-in-law. Again, while I'm in Sicily, we lost her in March, but still have 3 other active situations. And I would include what's going on with Mima and helping to close things out for her right now in Sicily. Has been, you know, sometimes awesome and sometimes not so awesome. So the situation with the person or people I provide care for can be unpredictable or unstable. That is incredibly true for me personally. I do not know what to expect, so it is hard to plan ahead. Oh my gosh, yes. I've had to cut down on my own expenses because I help pay for things for the person or people I care for. That is true. It's a financial burden on me or my family. That's true. Our family has disagreements about people not doing enough to help. You know, one of the data points I didn't share with you guys was these adjusted ratio. This is a huge one. If you are having caregiving related family disagreements, you are 3 times as likely to have anxiety, depression, or TSRD. My brother and I do not talk about our caregiving responsibilities. We have a clean line because we cannot talk about it calmly with each other. And I love him and he loves me, but not on this topic. So strongly agree. Our family has disagreements about people not spending enough time with the person or people I'm providing care to. That's a yes. I feel underprepared for most situations I encounter. I think that's less true for me now because I've been doing this for longer. That's very protective. That's good. But I always feel I should be more than I'm doing. Always. I don't think I have more to do than I can handle. At moments I do, but most of the time I don't. Partially because this is unusual and this is important. I feel incredibly supported as a caregiver by friends, neighbors, or family. On this one, for 1 second, we go back to those, you know, you have twice as likely to have depression, anxiety, or TSRD if you are feeling underprepared, not having as much personal freedom, or had to cut down on expenses. 3 times as likely caregiving related family disagreements or resentment about responsibilities. But guess what's protective? If you feel supported, it is the #1 thing that brings that intensity down and you will be shooting yourself back over to the green. So let's all be supportive of somebody else in this role. And when people offer help, let's learn to say, yes, I suck at that. I'm learning to do it better. I have someone I can turn to for support when things are difficult. I do. That's a really, really important thing to that point. Am I confident in my ability to navigate the health insurance benefits of the person or people I'm caring for? No. That's funny. I actually think that's funny. I wish there was like a box over here. I would click it. Strongly disagree. I know how to manage the financial situation of the person or people I'm caring for. Nope, I do not. I can tell you right now, we have no idea. But I do feel that I am doing a good thing, and that is incredibly important. And I think I am learning to effectively cope with a difficult situation. I think I am becoming confident in my ability to handle most things I have to do. But it has completely limited my ability to spend time doing things I take pleasure in. I do not have as much personal freedom as I would like. I would not say that I was depressed. I am unbelievably stressed out. I am awake at least 1 hour to 2 hours every night, churning over the things I am failing at as a caregiver and by extension, everything else. I do sometimes feel manipulated by the person or people I'm caring for. And I do sometimes resent what I have to do. Absolutely. My work situation is I am working full-time for pay. I don't think I've had to miss, yes, that's a lie. I've missed more work than normal. I am less productive, but I get incredible flexibility from my employer and I get a lot of support. So I'm done. I just want my score. Doing nothing probably feels like a break, and we're guessing you could use one. And I'm in the yellow. 70% of us are in the yellow right now. Okay, 63, let's look. Here's what's making things feel more intense. I've got no time for me, and I'm navigating money and benefits for others. here are things that are making things feel less intense. I feel supported by friends and I feel supported at work. If I wanted, I could click through and go to these resources, right? And it would tell me, this is where we could build that integration. Like you could go over to NPAF stuff, right? Like, oh, you need this conversation guide because you're not getting along with your family. Okay, try this, right? Here's a way to start looking at it. I can help another Archangel get their score, or I could create a profile so I could come back later, or a story or tip. So I'm gonna stop sharing. The thing that's interesting about that last little bit is that is what we do with somebody when we have them is entirely up to what is available. So in a lot of circumstances, unpaid caregivers only have what is available to them by the state. What they can find at NPAF. They don't have an employee assistance program. They don't have a behavioral health consult standing by. And that's all right, because there are so many other resources that exist. So the intensity index and the Archangels process overall is all about, just like you guys are working on, we can do this together, finding this population that would not think of themselves as being in this role, and they are. Forget destigmatizing, forget normalizing. Let's freaking celebrate these people. Let's start hiring people because they are an unpaid caregiver, because they're multitaskers, because they know how to get things done, right? And then let's help them get validated with their intensity, green, yellow, red, and let's crosswalk them over to things like NPAF so they can get support in the things that matter most for them. There. And I took too long, but 36 minutes, all right.
No, that was just perfect, Alex. I could not just be more inspired and excited with everything that you just shared. And I think it just ties well. I know Nicole and I were sort of having a love fest on the side, saying how excited we were to have you as a speaker here and how we want to have you back for next year. But I think it's such a fantastic way to even close out this campaign, because I think so much of what Archangels does is what Caregivers Count is about. But yeah, we're gonna open the floor for questions. If you have any, you're welcome to unmute and just ask your questions out loud or raise your hands. We, want to make sure you guys have a chance to interact with Alex, because she's just so fabulous. And I can't thank you enough for going through this, sharing your resources, sharing that deck with us from Italy, nonetheless. But yes, what questions or reactions or comments do people have?
I love Rebecca's comment from the Kapow Collaborative.
That's really what we should call the collaborative, for sure. And I think that our campaign previous to this one was our Be a Hero, Make a Plan campaign. That was very much focused on our superhero type of volunteers and the work that, care planning, how heroic care planning is. And I think Kapow just ties so nicely there. I see a hand from Michelle Edwards. You're welcome to unmute and ask your question.
Well, thank you very much. It's basically not a question. This is my first time attending with this particular group, and I'm a caregiver as well. And I just wanted to say the information that was presented was really done in a very good manner. And also the fact that there was data to support. So I thought that was a great job.
Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. And I also work for a nonprofit, so you can imagine.
That's a lot.
Any other comments or questions for Alex?
And I want you guys to know, by the way, most people, when I'm done doing what I just did, don't, because they're just sitting here like this. Like, that was a lot of data. So Michelle, thank you. For most people, they're like, I think I'm going to sit here and just let that data wash over me for a while. And I will remind you, I think why what NPAF is doing is so important is go back to that beginning. It's data and stories, right? Like, I love that quote, statistics are humans with the tears wiped away. Every single data point I showed, you guys know, that's a mama, that's a brother, that's a sister, that's a nephew. Like that's, my best friend, that's your best friend, that's you, that's me. It is real humans. And I think it is that combination that matters so much, which is why your campaign is so vital.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I see a comment here in our chat from Jessica. She says, hello, I'm not able to unmute at the moment, but thank you for sharing. I had no idea so many people are caregivers. This is definitely a misconception that the role is rare.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And again, that's just something just go share that data. I mean, I'll tell you guys, we were, as part of this trip, we were able to go to a nephew's event and sat at a table with two family members we don't talk to a lot. And at this table, I actually was not there. My honey was explaining why I was not there because I hadn't flown over to Sicily yet. And he was talking about the CDC study and what we're working on. And two members of his family who have never talked about, they are in caregiver roles. One of them we knew was in a caregiver role, the other one we didn't. Both admitted to suicidal ideation, both shared because of that data. That's actually me. And it was a conversation that would never have happened, right? So this ability to sort of, again, normalize, like, this is celebrated. You know, what Antonio was saying to them is like, this is incredible. The work that these caregivers do is phenomenal, right? Like, it should be on your resume. Which, by the way, if you go look at archangelswork.org, you can stick it on your resume. Jamie, do you have a question?
Oh, Jamie, we can't hear you. You are unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Why, you have a question. Do you want to go while we wait for Jamie to tell her computer to unmute itself?
I just wanted to say that this has been one of those have a smile every day campaigns, and I enjoyed your presentation. So I now know that I am not only a caregiver, but a Kapow collaborative, and I will use that today.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
All right.
Jamie,
let's see.
To ask your question?
Can't hear you, Jamie. That's so frustrating because I know you have great things to say. Darn it!
I know.
Computers. If you want, you can type in the chat box your comment.
Jamie, I just want you to know that you could tell by how fast I went through all that data. Like, that's my personal definition of hell, is not being able to talk. So whatever you were saying, we love you, we love you, we love you. Thank you. Rebecca, I know you would so feel that way too. Like,
All right, we'll wait for Jamie to post to the chat, but I just want to, again, Alex, on behalf of the NPAF team and everyone here, just thank you for, again, taking the time. And this is just the beginning. We like to use the metaphor of, you know, the first meeting as the first date at NPAF, and we hope that there are many more to come. And I think we're, you know, as you were talking, and I know we talked a little bit beforehand, the idea started percolating about how we can use, you know, that intensity index, and how we can, you know, weave that into, you know, what we can have our volunteers do, and taking that to, you know, their communities, and having people, you know, complete that. Again, just that reinforces that, you know what, I'm a caregiver and this is what I'm experiencing. And I think that is just incredibly helpful.
well, and what would be cool is we could give each of your folks, your Kapow advocates, their own link. So they could go into whatever their different communities were, and then we could look at reporting for that community.
Oh, wow.
So you could actually, you know, we could get as specific as we wanted from a reporting perspective, and then there could be the NPAF overall.
Yeah.
And then we can compare that to other benchmarks and look for where are lessons learned. Great.
Love that. And let's see. Jamie says she has so much to share on behalf of NPAF and caregivers that need these resources. As a volunteer, I have reached so many caregivers with these resources. Totally agree. Kapow. And yes, we talked with Jamie earlier, and Jamie is doing amazing things as far as finding the people in her community who need these resources. And I was just like, you need to attend this webinar because there will be more, and you can bring that to your community. So I can see the excitement, even though we can't hear you, Jamie.
Jamie physically located.
Near Wilmington, in North Carolina.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's so cool. All right. Well, I know you guys have the rest of your meeting to do. I am so grateful to have been here. Rebecca, thank you. And to all of you guys, I really love what you're doing. Feel very, very honored to be a part, and I cannot wait. I can't wait to kiss some more.
Campaign.
100%, right? I'm gonna go give my honey a big old kiss. I'll be asleep in like 20 minutes. Thank you so much.
Cheers, Alex. Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I was just really delighted that we could have Archangel, specifically Alex, be with us for this part of the meeting. We do have some other things we wanted to touch on as we round out the Caregivers Count campaign, and, sort of pick up on some of the things like the information, the data that Alex has left with us, and see how we can, just weave that into, what we do as patient advocates. So just a bit of a refresher on when we started this campaign at the beginning of June. We had our goal of making sure that we helped people identify as caregivers so that they know that there are resources available that will help them feel more equipped and confident in caring for their loved ones and themselves. And our charge was that, the one thing that you can do is to share our caregiving resource, our tip sheet, our Can We Talk About Caregiving? And part of what we did with this campaign, just to recap, we had a dedicated week of action where we had a number of different things outlined for each of the days. I think it was during the week of the 14th of June. And, we had a webinar that featured our other caregiving advocacy partners. We had several of you share your own stories using our Boast platform, and we thank you for those of you who did it. I know why you're on here, so thank you especially. And we also had a Twitter chat that actually garnered a lot of impressions on the Twitter platform. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Mary McKira briefly, just to talk through a little bit of the stats that we know so far. We're still collecting them. But Mary, I just thought you could just share a little bit about just what, your impressions of the impressions have been.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you everyone for participating in this campaign and recognizing its significance, especially during the pandemic. One thing that we have seen with the numbers is that caregiver responsibilities have spiked. And, one thing when I came on board, when this campaign was explained to me by Rebecca and Melissa and Nicole, was this is, I think, just recognizing that at some point in each of our lives, we will be a patient or we will be a caregiver. It's not one of those things that any of us could really step out of. And so with this campaign, as Melissa had mentioned earlier, we really wanted to make sure that we were providing our volunteers with as much information as possible by pulling in different partners and sharing different ways that we're all able to bring awareness to caregivers. And so with that, Melissa mentioned some of the actions that everyone participated in, and some of the statistics that we wanted to share with you all is the reach that we had with this awareness campaign digitally. And so, with each of these platforms, we shared data and we shared your stories and, different caregiving facts that we figured would be easy to digest and shareable, and really reinforce the point that caregivers do count, and that it is a very unique yet overlapping experience. And there are so many different diverse voices, which we captured with each of you whose stories you trusted us to share. And, you know, we're really excited and proud of that, to really help people feel more, you know, as Alexandra mentioned in her presentation, when, you know, you have these, when you share the numbers and you realize, oh, I'm actually in the range of norm with how I feel. And then with NPAF and your stories, how we're able to attach a face to the numbers with these different caregiver stories. That's beautiful and that's significant. And this campaign wouldn't have gotten off the ground without any of you. So thank you so much for your willingness to participate and for being so open to sharing your experiences.
Thank you, Mary. And I just want to add that, you know, we're still tabulating just what the impact is. And I know one of the things that we want to keep track of, you know, here is what you all are doing in your communities, what your reach has been, how many people you've spoken to, how many people have you shared our resources with, what organizations you've reached or you've connected with. And Mary, I think you have control of the poll. If you have a opportunity to launch that so we can maybe get a sense of what people have done.
Yes, I believe, do you guys have it on your screen? I see it on mine right now, the poll, perfect. So we just want to know how each of you participated in the campaign. It's all anonymous, just to gauge, you know, which aspect of the campaign resonated with you the most.
Give just a couple minutes, and I'm actually not able to see stuff from my end, so just let me know, Mary, when you.
We are at 6 out of 14 have voted.
Okay.
And we can also remind folks that even though the campaign is coming to an end, you know, this month, these resources will be available on our website throughout the year. So if you come across or think of a loved one who is a caregiver and, you know, could benefit from these resources, please feel free to share for as long as you can.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
We know these opportunities happen throughout the year. So there's a week of action, but then there's the other 51 weeks where we all have a chance to shine. Put on our wings.
Absolutely. All right. How does the poll look now, Mary?
The poll looks great. Everyone voted, apart from staff, I believe. And can everyone see the results? Yes, perfect. So we have 50% shared NPAF resources with people in their network and or community. 30% connected with stakeholders and influencers throughout the campaign. 80% attended the webinar, and 30% participated online on social media.
Perfect. All right. Well, now is where we want to hear from you all. You gave us a little sense of what you have accomplished, but we want to use this time now to have a bit of a discussion. We know we're coming up at the top of the hour, so just wanted to hear briefly, if you guys just don't mind either unmuting and speaking out loud or entering your comments into the chat, but just some things that we want to know about what it is that we can do better for next time. So the toolkit that we had, what did you like about it? You know, how did you feel about the activities and the actions that we suggested? The resource that we created, or can we talk about caregiving? We know that our guide that we created for our Be a Hero, Make a Plan was, you know, a lot more hands-on. This very much was, you know, a tip sheet and a resource sheet. Curious to hear what impressions you all had as you shared it with your community, and what your impressions are of it as well. And any other just, outstanding comments about the campaign? I'm going to just stop sharing my screen for a minute because I actually can't see anyone's faces or the chat. So just want to just have a quick conversation about just, what all you've done and why. If you don't mind, I'm going to call on you because I've been seeing your tweets and seeing your Caregivers Count hashtag. I know you've been doing a lot. Do you mind sharing what your experience has been?
No, I like Alex. I love to talk and I tell it all the time, but I actually had a picture just come up on my Facebook memories, and it showed me at the first NPAF that I attended was in 2015. And I was surprised myself that much time had passed. So I just thought, one of the things that I like to do, and my children say I do it very often and probably more than most people at my age, but one of the things that I like to do is I use each day, I try to use at least one piece of my contacts for social media. And so I was on Instagram, I was on Twitter, and I was on I have several Facebook groups that I'm on. And even more so, I start my morning at 6 o'clock with a prayer group. So I try to incorporate one part of the caregiving information from the toolkit or from something that I've learned for the day. I try to incorporate that so that I am using everything that I have in order to make it known the resources that are available. So this has been a wonderful opportunity to share the resources and to meet different people, and even just getting on the Zooms and seeing the faces of those that I know that maybe I've had contact with, but those that I know that I will have contact with in the future.
Thanks for sharing that, Why. You're amazing. I love seeing your videos, and thank you for contributing one for us in our campaign.
Even with a poem.
Yes.
It was a piece of a poem.
Not the piece of the poem.
Yes. Any other thoughts or anything else that people want to share? Just based off of what Alex shared. And for me, one of the things that I think is particularly interesting that we may want to have as part of our campaign for next year is incorporating that that is the Caregiver Intensity Index that ARCHANGELS has done, and maybe having our volunteers share that as a way to, see what, are people identifying as caregivers, and having them, again, know that those resources are available. What did you all think about what Alex shared at that very end, those questions? Jamie, are you trying to say something? I think you're on, let's see, you might still be on mute. I know you switched. We can hear you, yes.
Oh gosh, thank you. I mean, technology today has been like a day for me. But yeah, I was very excited about what Alex was saying about the different resources that she provides for the caregivers. During the campaign, the Be a Hero, Make a Plan campaign, I reached out to a lot of family members and a lot of actual caregivers and clients that didn't have an idea of where to get resources from or just how to navigate different systems. I mean, from the smallest thing of just even having technology or computer to even figure out how to get a ride to the grocery store or to figure out, how to do anything. So it was very amazing, the feedback that the Be a Hero, Make a Plan campaign, the impact that it had on the community that I serve. There are a disadvantaged community, and that's the population that these resources really, really reach. It was amazing to hear Alex speak about from the caregiver's point of view, because as owning a home care business. We see it on both ends of the spectrum, from the client point of view, the family, and the caregiver. And for her to tie the mental stability of caregivers and the impact that it has on them was just a different area for me. I never tied that together. So that was awesome for her to broaden that horizon for me, just to see, like, yeah, caregivers are up under stress. I mean, we advocate for them as well, but we don't really think about the actual stress that they're under. And to see those statistics about suicide was just kind of like blowing. So I was kind of very excited. So great. Everything was just great.
Yes. And I know, Jamie, you shared with us that you are still holding care planning webinars, still reaching people about our care planning guide. And we really have designed our campaigns to build on one another. So, with our care planning guide and making sure that we, include or involve caregivers as well as part of that, whole picture of what care should be. And then when we follow up, in the fall with our needs navigation campaign, and then, round it out with Get Covered, they all build on one another. So all of the connections that you guys are making right now are important, because there will always be resources that we will want to share with these connections that you're making. And Nicole, you're so polite with your hand.
Before Nicole talks, though, big shout out to Olivia and Christine Bracho.
Yes.
On the call. Family matters.
Exactly. I sounds like my mom's running around doing multitasking as she would. But yeah, I just wanted to shout out all the caregivers on this call, but especially my mom and sister. I know it's been a challenging number of years, and I really appreciate the work that you all have done, and hope that I have been supportive, but know that, we will all be a caregiver one day in another shape or form. So really glad that I get to invite you to this campaign, but also, that our organization is working on this, because it is so near and dear to our hearts. So thank you. And yeah, cheers to all the caregivers here.
Yes.
I hope next year we will be able to maybe do a book study, just do a book club from the, before we start. And I think we'll get a lot of ideas on just maybe doing a book club on a particular part of one of the resources that NPAF is doing. Because I think that sometimes people, when they see that when they see that their information is appreciated as a book study, sometimes that will help. So just, things that will catch somebody's eye, because book clubs are, they're the thing. And so even if you have people that don't necessarily read a lot, but just maybe concentrate on a part of the resources.
I love that idea. Why I think we may include that for next year. We'll likely connect with you and see how we can make that work and build it into our toolkit. I really love that. Any other final thoughts or questions before I'll share my screen again, just to put a finer point on some of the things that we're doing beyond this campaign. Let's see. Will the PowerPoint? Yes, the PowerPoint will, from Alex. Actually, I will reach out to her. That's a great question. If she can make that deck available, but there is a recording of this call right now, this webinar, that we will share with everyone here as well. Let's see. I see a comment from Namita. Let's see, this is my first formal interaction with NPAF's efforts, and I'm really excited to continue being involved. The focus on caregivers is so important, and the fact that there's published data behind it is a huge plus. Yes, we could not agree more, and thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm just gonna share my screen again for just some of the final slides as we close out. I think Nicole mentioned this and so did Rebecca, but even though this campaign ends today, just wanted to emphasize that caregivers always count. And with that, we think that there is something that everyone here as a volunteer could continue doing in their communities. And some of you who have participated in our patient congress last year may remember a similar illustration, but I'm a huge fan of Charlie Mackesy, and this particular one has always stuck with me. It says, "What is the bravest thing you've ever said?" asks the boy. And "Help" was the response, said the horse. But we know a lot of the times caregivers may not ask for help because, again, it goes back to that point that Alex made, that they just don't have time. And I kind of took this pro tip from ARCHANGELS website. So much like Alex was going through our website, I was also going through theirs. But one of the things that I think that we can do as volunteers, as patient advocates, instead of asking, "How can I help?" just help. I think that can go really far in supporting our caregivers. And the way we really want to do that is continuing to steer caregivers to the right resources. And so that's what we really want you to do. So again, this campaign will, these steps will just lead to our actions for next year. But what we would love for you all to keep in mind are just identifying those local resources, even within your immediate community. Mary, you hear Mary and I say this often, you all are the experts of your own community, and we want you to sort of bring that information to us. What groups or organizations are there that provide the sort of support that we're talking about that caregivers need. And what we would maybe love to do down the line is build that library of resources that have been, that would be made from information that you all helped gather. And in that spirit of, researching these different organizations, actually make those connections, introduce NPAF and PAF as services that can help. I know when we spoke with Jamie earlier, that was one of the things that she would just, she says it casually. She has these different connections to her communities, but then she'll make that plug of like, I'm a volunteer with NPAF, and this is what we do, and this is what we're about, and we urge you all to do the same. And once you have that list of resources, share them with the caregivers in your life and with us, because again, we really, we want to point people to the right places to find this information. So in addition to the work that we're asking you all to do, know that we at NPAF are also working on this. And I wanted to share this ad that was posted in yesterday's Washington Post, where NPAF, you'll see, has joined over 60 organizations advocating for a caregiving tax credit in a bill referred to as the Credit for Caring Act. And so that is something that we are working on. We're also working on efforts alongside some of our other caregiving advocacy partners for paid family leave, and also our needs navigation work, which is what brings me to what we have coming up next, our needs navigation campaign this fall. And we really see that as being a benefit for everyone, patients, caregivers, their families. So know that that's on the horizon. And one thing you can do until then is to recruit 2 people to join our cause. And I also just wanted to put in a plug that we do have our quarterly regional calls with our volunteers. Next week, July 7th and 8th, we will, there is an invitation included in our latest newsletter that went out, but we will get a specific invitation for this coming up, I think, tomorrow. But with that, are there additional questions or comments?
Also, we'll send a link to the ARCHANGELS where you are in your caregiving journey. Type that score, that metric score. We will send that as well in our follow-up email to this call.
Yes, we will include those resources. All right. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today. It was great seeing your faces. I know we're over the hour, but again, I always enjoy these conversations. So thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Have a good day. Take care.
All
Bye,
right.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.